All right, so we've already modeled the USB plug and the inside piece of the plug. The only other part that we need to model to finish off, the inside of our USB flash drive before we start designing the enclosure is the PCB or printed circuit board. I have a second tab open for you guys with my dimensions and my dimensioned drawing up. So I'm going to be using this dimension drawing to show you how I would go about creating my PCB. So we're going to start off with a new sketch, and that sketch plane, I'm actually going to flip my USB plug around, and I am choosing this bottom portion of the USB plug as my sketch plane. So I'm going to click right there and then look at my USB plug from the bottom. Before we move any further, just get in the habit of naming all the sketches. So we'll name that PCB because that's essentially what we are creating. So to start off, just because both sides of our PCB are identical, I'm going to start off with a construction line in the very middle of the USB. And that construction line is going to help us when we create, the little notches that come out of the PCB. And I'm actually going to dimension this construction line 33 millimeters, and you'll see why in a little bit. All right, and I'm just going to pull this out. Now, if we take another look at our dimension drawing, for the most part, the overall profile of the PCB is a rectangle. So what I'm actually going to do is grab the center point rectangle tool. This is going to allow us to make sure that everything's symmetric on both sides. The overhang of the PCB on this side is going to be identical to the overhang of the PCB on the opposite side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the construction line. That's where I'm going to start the center point rectangle. And then I'm going to drag it out without dimensioning it until this point is horizontal with the kind of cutout on the USB. So I'm going to show you guys that again, just so you can see it. So I'm going to click the construction line and pull out, and now you'll see that it should be horizontal with the USB plug. If you can't get it perfectly horizontal, that's okay, because what we can end up doing is grabbing the horizontal constraint tool and clicking our 2 points and making it horizontal to one another. Now, the reason we created this 33 millimeter dimension over on the side is because the total length of our PCB is 33 millimeters. So if I just make the bottom point of our construction line coincident with the very bottom of our PCB, everything shrinks up and it's perfectly to size. Now I have the overall length of my PCB. I need to dimension the width. The width of the PCB looks like it's 14 millimeters. So I'm going to grab my dimension tool, and that's going to be 14 millimeters. Perfect. And now since we did use a center point rectangle and we did have this construction line perfectly in the center of our USB plug, I know that this distance here from the edge of the USB to the edge of the PCB is identical to on the opposite side. So I don't even need to go about measuring that, which is great. Now, the only other part that we need to model here are these little notches that are taken out of the PCB. So we'll just start on one side. It doesn't matter which side you start on. And I'm going to draw just that overall profile, and we will dimension it in a second. It's just basically, a square. I just used the line tool and created 3 lines. Now, if I look at my dimension drawing, we see that the length and width of my notch, both of them are 1.25 millimeters. So it's 1.25 millimeters in and 1.25 millimeters over. So I can see that on the top view and also on the side view. So I'm going to come back in, grab my dimension tool, dimension that line 1.25. And I have a constraint on there. Something was horizontal, so or vertical, so I'm just going to delete that. And now I'm going to dimension this notch, which is 1.25 as well. Perfect. So now I have the overall profile. Before I do anything about trying to get it reflected over on this side, I do just need to put it in the correct position. So it looks like from the front of my PCB out, it is 8.25. The start of the notch is 8.25 millimeters down. So I'm still in the dimension tool, just making sure. I'm going to start at the top and then start at the very top of the notch. And this is going to be 8.25 millimeters. All right, now you see all our lines are black. Everything's fully defined. Dimensions, everything, we are good. Before we go ahead, like I said, and reflect this over, I do just want to use the trim tool to take away this line so that the profile we're looking at is almost identical to my dimension drawing. Now, we can use the mirror tool to quickly just reflect our profile over. So I'm going to select a mirror line as my construction line, and then the 3 lines I wish to mirror are the lines for the little notch. And then the last thing I have to do is just trim that line away. Now, since we mirrored it, we know that these two are identical and we don't even need to dimension it. Now I'm going to hit the green check and go to isometric view. And you'll notice that this sketch kind of looks like it's floating, but it's actually just laying on the very bottom of our USB plug. So I'm going to use my extrude tool. I want to extrude the PCB sketch. It is going to be going in the down direction. I'm going to come over to the right side view just so I can see this, but it's not going to be an add extrude, it's going to be a new extrude. And the thickness of my PCB can be found right here on the front view of my PCB on my dimension drawing. It's 0.75 millimeters. Let me go 0.75. I'm going to rename this PCB. I'm going to hit the green check. Now, if I look at it from isometric view, it is just laying right on the very bottom of our USB plug. Last thing I have to do is rename this PCB. And you'll notice if you've already opened up your USB flash drive, you'll notice that the PCB is typically green. Sometimes they're red. It totally depends on your USB, but for the most part, everyone's is going to be green. So I'm just going to change the appearance to be green, close my appearance tab, and then we have our PCB.